If there were a place in the world where you could store and protect the truth, it might be deep in the Rockies, in a field, on a ranch, in a silo, where an American patriot tells you what keeps him awake at night. Now, here is Medal of Honor recipient Drew Dix and words from the Silo.
Welcome, folks. Welcome to the Words from the Silo. You know, some time ago we did episode 1, and we got a lot of feedback on that, and we want to go on the Greenland subject. We want to talk a little bit about that, but want to welcome you to episode number 2 about readiness, and you're going to feel good about that because I know it's keeping a lot of you up all night, just like it does me.
Yeah,
Brad, what did we get from the?
Well, we got a handful of questions that I wanted to run by you just to kind of clear up a few things. You know, the first one that I thought would be important to talk about is what were your personal qualifications to, and why were you selected to work on the ice? I mean, was it because you had a Medal of Honor?
Well, I guess having a Medal of Honor is the least qualifications on the ice because that's doesn't give you any peculiar or unique qualities. But it's a good question, though. You know, I was in Alaska doing a little bush flying. I had an air service in there after I retired. And before I retired, I was in an infantry battalion at the Arctic Infantry Battalion. We had a good reputation of being pretty studly bunch of guys up there, could handle about anything. And living in the bush in Alaska. And I guess the only connection with the Medal of Honor that might have helped me is someone heard about me.
Okay.
And then, but that's probably the least qualification because it won't keep you warm unless you know how to do it.
That makes sense. Yeah. So that was a great question that we didn't really talk about. How about, you know, another thing came up, some interesting ones. You know, like we talked about some of the dangers up there. What were the dangers of, like, say, polar bears? We kind of skimmed over it a little bit.
Yeah. You know, we recognized that that polar bears were a significant threat because we're out there and the sun comes up on the 21st of March, and there's bears out there, and the ones that are out there are just hungry, and that happens to be the males. Females are all hibernating and with their cubs or whatever on land. Okay. And so the males are just out there with not a lot to do but just hunt and feed their belly. So one of the things that really was unique is that we got open water once in a while. And if there's a lot of open water, no big deal. But if it's been tight for a while and the water pops open, and you see seals come up, the first thing you're doing is taking your eyes off that seal and looking behind you because that's groceries for that bear. We're really looking for that.
So how hard were they to see? I mean, you know,
the
white,
bears?
Yeah, you know, you got a lot of white out there, white on white, and the bears are white.
The bears are white except for that black nose. And I'll tell you, there's rumors about how they cover their nose. I don't think that's true or not, but it's kind of a cool idea because that's the only thing it's not white on them. Yeah. Is that nose.
Interesting.
And they're hard to see, and if you get a little bit of blowing snow and the sky is dimmed down, and then you got all nothing but white ice and snow, and if it's blowing in there, sometimes you can make a bear if you look hard enough.
Yeah. So another kind of along the idea of those kinds of hardships, you know, watching out for the bears and stuff. You know, you talked about, you know, you couldn't eat enough calories to keep your body warm. So how cold was it? That was the question. How cold was it?
I don't know how to explain that unless you've been there, because it's damn cold. Because figure out when we go in there, it's not as cold as the interior of Alaska sometimes because of the land mass. That's where the cold air sinks, because you have some open water and it warms up the earth a little bit. But an average of minus 40 when we first went in, but with a constant breeze of 6 to 10 knots, mostly all the time. And then a lot of 15, 20 knot winds. It's damn cold, and the point about calories is tough. We couldn't figure out how much you would need, because you worked all the time. We worked 20, 21, 22, 3, 4, 5 hours, 25 hours a day, because we had a mission, and we ate really good. And everybody's bunk had number 10 cans of mixed nuts, and you just ate those nuts as fast as you could eat them whenever you went by, just to build the calories.
That sounds miserable, actually. It sounds terrible. I'm glad guys like you were up there doing that, so the rest of us could stay safe. The other question that came up was. You did it for 10 years. What was the span? I mean, you were on the ice how long? And then, over that 10-year span, is it how many, several weeks?
Well, that's a real good question. First of all, we'd go up there sometime in late February and start getting set up on Greenland, is where we based out of. And then you couldn't do much before the 21st of March, when the sun came up, because you can't really see the contrast. For flying, a darn sure couldn't land on the ice without contrast. So we would go in there about the 21st of March as soon as we would parachute in or go in. And then we would try to get everything done by the first week in May.
Okay.
So roughly 6 weeks.
Yeah.
6, 7 weeks, and that's because ice starts getting dynamic and moving and getting a little rotten. It did that all the time. It's not like it's warming up and it's happening. It's probably more dynamic now than it used to be, because it is warming up. The climate is.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that makes sense. That kind of wraps up the questions. I mean, what are we talking about today?
Well, we're talking about today as something that I know keeps a lot of people up all night. It's darn sure keeping me up all night, and that's the readiness of our military. And are we ready to fight the next war and win it? And so we need to talk about that a little bit. And I want to first mention a little bit about my lifespan. Is I joined the Army at 17, and now I'm 80 years old. So I've seen a lot. And a lot of what I'm going to talk about is not how it used to be, because we've all heard how it used to be is different than how it is now, and maybe it's had it tougher or whatever. You've heard those kind of stories, and that's not where I'm coming from. But I want to make it clear, in my credibility, is when I retired from the Army in 1982, I didn't stop working military-type projects, and I continued on there until around 2022.
Okay.
When I was training and helping with trade crafts and the special operators in the U.S. military and other outfits. And so I feel like I know a little bit about what it's like now and what it was like before, and the changes that have taken place. And a lot of these changes are normal, but we can't change for change's sake. Mm-hmm. Fighting is fighting, winning is winning. And the one thing that I am concerned about, and we're getting back to that, is the warrior ethos. There is nothing else that gets in front of someone that has that warrior mindset. And we need those kind of people.
So how do you get that? How do you learn the warrior mindset?
Well, you learn it from those that were before you, and you accept that. You want to be a part of it. Just like when I went into Special Forces, when I was old enough to get in Special Forces at 21, a lot of those guys that were my instructors and team members that I respected were from World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them on our A team were displaced persons, that's what we call them, DPs, that were from Europe, that joined the U.S. military so they could kill communists. Mm-hmm. That's it. I mean, they were in that warrior ethos. And not everybody can get that, that feels like they can be a part of it. It's something that grabs you right here. So my concern, and leading into this, is that if you're of a mindset, first of all, you can't just say I'm a warrior, right? I take the oath and I'm a warrior. No. But if you join the military and you have other special interests that go beyond that warrior ethos, the warrior concept and mindset of all for one and one for all kind of deal, and let's say you have a special cultural interest, that's a deal killer right there.
Okay, so define that. Give me an example of what that
Well,
would be.
let's say you have I'll get right into it. Let's say you're culturally challenged and you want to be a female instead of a male. Okay. That's pretty serious stuff. And so that'll put you way ahead of, in front of being the warrior. Like, someone would argue with me, but I don't think so. Yeah. I mean, I've seen it on the battlefield. When people have it, they will do anything they can to protect the mission, protect their honor, and the honor of the unit they're in.
Okay. So, I mean, does that kind of lead into non-merit-based performance?
Well, you're getting right in there, Brad.
I know.
Yeah.
So
but I appreciate that because
I'm too far ahead.
we don't sugarcoat stuff.
Yeah.
And I've signed on with an organization, STARS, that has been around not too many years, but they became into being. It was founded by several former general officers and high-ranking officers in the military in Colorado here.
Okay.
And they're an organization that is stand together against racism and radicalism in the services.
So that's acronym, STARS, with two R's.
Yeah.
STARRS.
Yeah.
Stand together against racism and radicalism in the services.
Yeah, and when you first read that, you say, "Oh, yeah, they're against racism. Of course, they're against racism, but they're talking about racism all the way around, against people of all races, including white people and Asians and all of them, but zero. We're eliminating all racism. In other words, you're going to be a warrior. You're all in it to the same degree." And I'm an advisor on their board, and I'm proud to be a part of that because they're taking it to the serious level that attention because of the credibility of those former military officers and enlisted that were prominent in their field. And I think that diversity, for the sake of diversity, is a killer. Mm-hmm. We have always been a diverse military because we were equal and we had drafts. In World War II, we drafted farmers and welders and all kinds of folks that their diversity in those skills allowed us to defeat the enemy. They did some remarkable things in World War II. But we don't have the draft anymore.
Right. So, what I mean, as time has gone by and combat's changed, maybe with technology and things like that, is that why this is even surfaced as a as a possibility to not develop the warrior class? I mean, which ties back to readiness.
Yeah, actually, a few years ago, I actually heard a comment made in the past administration about eliminating the warrior class. And I said, what? I mean, we got to have warriors to fight wars, right? That's what it means. And you can't have a bunch of folks out there that are academicians or whatever and wish themselves to be warriors. They've got to be willing to put up with the hardships and train hard, because if you don't train hard, you're not going to fight hard, because you're going to fight how you're trained.
Right.
Because so I'd like to get back a little bit on this.
Okay.
Because this change from the warrior class or the reducing a meritocracy has been around since about the 70s. It started.
Say that word again.
Meritocracy.
Okay.
In other words, it's to be based on merit.
Oh, merit. Yeah, I got
Yeah,
you.
yeah. But in the 70s, when the military, this is Drew Dix talking now. This is not just, I think it's right, but the listeners and viewers here can determine what they think. But what I think is it started in the 70s when we eliminated the draft and we created an all-volunteer force, and the need to fill a military without the draft.
Okay.
So in the 70s, we finished a pretty unpopular war, so politicians said no more draft. Okay, makes sense. And some of us said, hey, volunteer army, that's pretty cool. We were younger then, and the idea was good, and we were filling the ranks with pay and comfort and all these incentives that get your military force in there. But we also had, at that time, in the ranks, those that were before us, those warriors that passed that transition to the new breed, and we accepted it. So we're pulling away from that now. We don't have those that were before us recently in
that
touch.
makes sense. Yeah.
And so in the 70s, and about 1973, I think, is when the draft was terminated, and the all-volunteer service began. At that point, we started putting recruitment not just to be the best and toughest and kill the enemy and take it to the limit kind of thing, but get an education, go to college, get your degree, go to the military service for that purpose. Mm-hmm. That started, in my opinion, this problem that we're having. And because recruiting was always been tough, that they're just doubling down on more
incentives,
to get people to join. And let's say 2001, we did a hell of a job when we were attacked, 9/11. Sent an entire force across an ocean and overwhelmed a whole country in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It couldn't be done. It couldn't be done now, and I don't think anybody could do it. But we could do it. And it'd be tough now to think that we could do the same thing.
I can remember you talking about that, and you thought that we stayed too long because we won that deal in like you said, 2 weeks, and we maybe should have pulled out at the time and said, hey, you mess around again, we're coming back.
That's exactly the way we should be fighting. Fight the next war, and to win, leave, clean up your gear, shine that ammunition up, get it ready as you're leaving, wave at them and say, don't do it again because we'll come back and we know where you live. That kind of philosophy is what we need to get back to.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we stayed 20 years again in another war and just built it up, and we created a whole culture of providing comfort to our soldiers and our Marines and sailors and the guys on the ground. Now, I'm going to be misunderstood here. I'm all for taking care of soldiers.
Yeah.
I really am. But how many convoys have run up and down those roads that got blown up hauling comfort items? Think about that. We just created a target. And so we've trained a whole generation of folks. And they did a wonderful job. I'm not taking one damn thing away from anybody on the ground, any private airman, seaman, whatever. It's the leaders that carry the burden of maybe getting too soft.
Comfort items. Define comfort items.
Oh, I mean, probably pizzas and ice cream and stuff like that, and dry cleaning and whatever in these forward operating bases. They didn't even call them forward operating bases anymore. They call them FOBs.
Did you get a lot of pizzas in Vietnam?
I didn't get any. Now, they might have had some somewhere, but in the rear. But no, I probably being misunderstood now, but a little bit. And I love the soldiers. I love the military. I put the burden right square on the shoulders of those general officers, flag officers that know better.
What do we do to fix this problem?
Well, it's gonna take some work, and I think we're on the right track. I think eliminating DEI is absolutely essential to establish a warrior class, because if you're a warrior, there's nothing above you. That's it. That's what you live for, is to be a part of that unit. And if you're carrying around a flag that's not red, white, and blue with stars on it, or your unit flag and it's some other kind of flag, then that's where your allegiance is. And that's, I think it's just not, it can't be tolerated.
So eliminating DEI means that you get back to just merit-based performances. Those who are the best go to the battlefield, and there's no lower criteria to get a promotion or whatever, or to be in a unit or whatever. Is that?
Yeah, Brad, it's simple. If you're going to be training to fight and win a war, then you're going to train to fight to win the war. And that is to be the toughest. Whether you are or not, being a warrior makes you think you are. Mm-hmm. And that it requires leadership too, to be able to challenge the service members, challenge them so they know what defeat is on the training field, so they won't want to witness it on the battlefield.
Yeah,
we've got to have that. There is no room for reducing the standards so we can get more of another entity, whether it's gender or race.
So what are some of the criterias that are being lowered between different warriors, I guess?
Well, yeah, the combat fitness test, the training. I mean, the standards for the combat fitness test have been lowered.
Lifting weight?
No, it's usually in a field environment, rope climbing, scaling obstacles, navigating and through difficult terrain or whatever, those kinds of things. We've just lowered the standards. And I can remember, and the Marine Corps is one of the, is one of my sister services, being an Army guy, but I spent a lot of my time in the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps is held the line as good as any, but they still having some problems. I can remember, Brad, and I'd say it was 2000, probably, I don't know, 15, 16, 17. The Marine Corps invited me and a couple Marine Medal of Honor recipients to speak to all the Marines in Camp Lejeune. They made it that every Marine was going to hear us talk. It was quite a challenge to orchestrate all that, but we spoke to every one of them. And it stuck in my brain, and I was honored to be there because I was an Army guy. Mm-hmm. But I attended a couple of Marine courses, so I could speak Marine. But anyway, so I thought it's just strictly going to talk about motivating. That's what the Marines are in, motivating their young Marines and how to be a Marine and win the war and rah, 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 and all that stuff. I thought that was a great thing. And then we had these large groups of Marines, some of them up to 1,000, some smaller, 40, 50, but we went for 3 days around the Lejeune. But one time, the very first time, after we talked, and former Colonel Barney Barnum was with me, Marine, Medal of Honor recipient. And after we talked, we did a Huntley-Brinkley kind of thing. And then the number one question was, what do you think about the integrated battalion? And I'm thinking, oh, I'm embarrassing myself right now. I thought integrated, I thought they were talking about racial integration. I have to admit, I didn't know that soldier, that Marine, was talking about integrating females into the Marines. Okay. They were doing that right then. And it didn't take me long to figure that out, because I asked him, could you explain integrated? Well, we're training with females. Okay, got it. Every group we talked to in that 3-day period, they asked that same question. So it's on the minds of those young men and women. The women were asking the questions too. What do you think about females integrated in a combat unit?
Well, let me ask you that question. What do you think about females integrated into a combat unit?
Well, I have to echo the Barney Barnum's answer to that. He's a little more diplomatic than I am, but he said, if having the women and the females in the Marine Corps makes it a better Marine Corps, I'm all for it. That's what he said. But when I think about it, and you got to admit, I'm looking at what I know. And when I was a rifle company commander in the jungles of Vietnam, and what we had to do and what those young guys had to do and carry and move around, I don't see any way that it would work. Yeah, having the females in there. I don't see it. Now, that's not saying that I have the answer. I'm just saying that I don't see it. And when I talk to those questions, and I'm blunt when I answer questions. Yeah. And because I think that's what they need to hear. And when I remember I was in a Marine, at that same event in Camp Lejeune, in a maintenance unit, 40 or 50 Marines that couldn't leave to go to the larger venue. I was going to them and Barney Barnum and I would split up and we'd go to all of them, try to catch them all. But there was one that jumped out at me, and there was about 40 or 50 maintenance people. Now, they're all Marines. They can all fight if they have to. And this one female Marine asked me what it was like in Vietnam in the jungles with those young men. She asked me that. Evidently, she'd heard me talk to one of the other groups or from somebody else. And I said, well, I I have pulled leeches out of the orifice of every man's body, an orifice in every man's body.
Yeah.
Ooh, she shuddered, and I said, well, I'm telling you, it's different. We go out for 90 days and come back for 2. Get a shower, change clothes, whatever, and go back for 90 days. And she just didn't have anything to say, and I said, well, what, you got a problem with that? She says, I don't know how we could do it. That's all she said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's wanting to is one thing, but doing it is another.
Sure.
So, and I'm going to say this again in this program, is I'm old-fashioned. I heard Colin Powell answer that question right here in Pueblo, Colorado in 2004. Remember, Brad, when you did that documentary and we released it for Ross Perot, and he was here?
I do.
Colin Powell.
I remember.
And somebody asked him in the audience about women in combat, and he answered, I'm a bit old-fashioned, but I don't think it'll work. That's what he said.
Yeah.
You remember that?
So, I mean, there's the obvious liabilities. I mean, certainly women in the services have a place where they can do stuff. But on the battlefield and some of these combat situations, talk about some of the liabilities that even happening today that we've talked about.
Let me get back to it. Now, there's studies going to be done, and one of the best studies in the damn world is between Ukraine and Russia right now, and the IDF and Hamas and Hezbollah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, somebody ought to be looking at what they're doing. Hell with all these studies of computer graphics and whatever. Look at the battlefield and what they're doing, and if they're using them. But here's the big issue. If we've got to build a military to accommodate every size, shape, or whatever person, it's very expensive, and you can't do it. You just can't do it on a large scale. We have trained our military to fight in a war. We have air superiority. We have superiority on the ground mostly. So we can just do what we need to do. But if we don't have air superiority, and if we don't have the dominance over our enemy, then they're going to be dominant over us. And if we get into maneuver elements, battalions, brigades, regiments, divisions, and we have large-scale casualties and captured, guess what? I can hear the public right now, because we all heard it. So many women and children captured. Our enemy may not give a rat's ass about gender, but they know that we do. And if you had 100, 200 females, mothers that have kids at home, being captured, don't you think the enemy would use it? That's a vulnerability that we're not prepared for.
So they become targets, even high priority targets.
If I was an enemy, I'd go after females, and I'd capture them. In one of my jobs in Vietnam, my first tour was eliminate the enemy infrastructure through capture. I know how to do it, and I know we can, but if you focused on those targets, whether in the rear or what, it doesn't matter. This is not a physical ability. Now it gets down to whether they're just a female captured. We've got to educate our population to be prepared for that.
So with our society and the way we are, that gives the enemy major leverage when they do get these captures.
Absolutely.
Captures. Major leverage.
Absolutely. We're the only country that really worries too much about our POWs when the war is ongoing. I mean, think about Vietnam, what a political issue that was. Now, I'm absolutely not against females being in the military. There's two issues here. One is the physical ability to carry a load and attack up a hill or whatever, period. That's one. The other is there's places in the military for women, and it could be in combat, but in a defensive combat role. Mm-hmm. Let's face it, the women love our country as much as the men do. I know that. And it's hard for me to say that we just have to be smart about this thing. I've seen male and female in a judo match where they're supposed to hold punches, 230-pound guy and a 130-pound woman. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. And our country's a bit fickle right now. We've got an element that does not want biological men in sports. For what reason?
Dominance.
They're dominating, and the women are getting hurt in some cases. Mm-hmm. So the same people want the women to be in combat. It don't make any sense.
Makes no sense.
Makes zero sense. So I'll get a lot of calls about this. We'll be talking about the next issue. But I absolutely believe there is a place for women in the military. Just aviation is one of them. Mm-hmm. What about World War II and the Wasps? They flew those bombers to Russia to provide them the hardware.
Yeah.
Did a wonderful job. My wife is a pilot and flew the Bush in Alaska, but I'll tell you what, she doesn't want to be captured or doesn't want to be combat.
Right.
But she can fly a damn airplane.
Yeah.
So let's do it. But at the same time, we've got to indoctrinate those pilots and those men that are in the units that if a woman is captured, we go after them at the same level we would for a male. It should be no different.
Yeah.
Because we're gonna take resources to recover a captive that POW that is not going to help the war.
Right. So, not shifting gears a little bit. We've talked about in our readiness and are we ready to fight and win the next war? The third option and some of the paramilitary experience you have.
Brad, where are you getting all this stuff?
Man,
that's why you're here, right?
I'm pretty smart, huh?
But I left the Army in 1982, and I stayed doing stuff that in a civilian capacity. And my first assignment in Vietnam, I had the opportunity to work as a detailee for the Central Intelligence Agency. And at the time, that was pretty much a secret or classified in itself. But now it's well known that the military, CIA work together. I have a great respect for the paramilitary side of the CIA. Those guys and gals doing some neat stuff around the world. It's a dangerous world. Mm-hmm. They always have been there. They're doing it now. And when you say third option, you got diplomacy and you got war, and one of the option is to maybe go in there and do something that will prevent a war. Mm-hmm. And so we've got some capability. We've got some options. And so, to my knowledge, not a lot of the DEI stuff has gotten into that, but I know in the CIA they were a banner organization for DEI. They were. It was incredible. Now they're getting cleaned up, but I'm hopeful that it's thorough, cleansing job. But that's about all I want to say on that subject.
Okay, good enough. Wanted to put a shout out to the Center for American Values, one of our sponsors of this program, and that's kind of my role in this podcast. And it's and so the Center for American Values that you and I co-founded.
Yeah, Brad, it's very dear to me. Personally, in 1969, when I was awarded the Medal of Honor, pretty significant part of my life. But I've always thought that that you shouldn't stop when you receive recognition, no matter when it is. Mm-hmm. In this case, is 50-some, several years ago, 55 years ago, more. Oh, well, no, I don't think I can add right. It's a long time ago.
Nobody would ever accuse you of not charging forward and sitting back on your haunches, as you said.
But I do say that, going around the country and doing things, and going around the world doing things, and coming back home. And in 2010, when we created the Center for American Values, it's been a highlight of my life, and I hope it survives me. I'm sure it will. And I ask the viewers to understand that there are organizations in this country of ours, like the center, that are doing some great work.
Yeah.
And if you don't have if you can't get involved by creating one or joining one, you can support it financially, because that's, like anything, you need money to do it, and we don't waste it.
Yeah, well, we appreciate the donations for sure, and I'm sure we have a graphic flashing on the screen where you can donate to the center. Of course, if there's no video, you can go to www.americanvaluescenter.org and donate there. Just the final thing I'd like to just ask you about today for the Readiness is just our threats, the threats to our vital interests in America. I know we got a little graphic that we could maybe talk about, and maybe you could kind of give us an idea of what STARS put out here in these graphics.
Well, my good friends at STARS sent me a graphic when I asked them some input, and you can see the Air Force is very weak, the Navy is weak, according to this study done by the Heritage Foundation, and then the Army is marginal, but the Marines still are strong, and I attribute that to the warrior ethos that they have accepted and try to hang on to.
Yeah.
But we have to really be careful, even though the current administration has said no more DEI. We've all seen it lately. They're going overboard, and there's holdouts. It's actually those same people that are fighting the DEI subversively, the changes, are the ones that would put DEI over the military, mm-hmm. over the warrior ethos. That's my example. It clears it up right there. If they'll put the DEI in front of winning a war, then it answers my question right now, or your question, what is a warrior class? Yeah. It's not putting something above them. And when you look at what they've done, and it clearly was intentional, when they eliminated Black Medal of Honor recipient, eliminated Enola Gay, which was an airplane, and it had nothing to do with gay rights. It's what they called the airplane, for whatever Enola Gay meant. But eliminated those connections to anything that is DEI. In other words, they threw out Enola Gay and then this Black Medal of Honor recipient portrait, which is ridiculous.
What was that? I don't remember that.
Well, yeah, after Trump, the president gave that order, and Pete Hegseth, the secretary, said no more reference to DEI. So someone went out there and they eliminated everything that had a reference to it, like, the Tuskegee Airmen, WASP, the women that flew World War II bombers. They eliminated those in museums and things like that. Well, come on.
Oh, so that's where you're saying they went overboard.
They went overboard just like when communities are going to reduce their budget, that people get up there and say kids are going to die in fires because we don't have the fire department mm-hmm. budget, so they're going to go overboard. That's a simple analogy, but that's the enemy within. That proves that we can't accept a DEI because they put that purpose, DEI in itself, above being a warrior to fight this country's war and win. Mm-hmm. That's the issue right there.
That makes sense. So we're coming upon the end of the show. I wanted to just kind of plug a few of our ideas for some future episodes, just so people tuning in can think about things. We're talking about having one on healthcare. We're going to have one on the Department of Education, have an episode maybe on your time and your experience with Central America, the Middle East, Vietnam, leading draftees, Alaska flying missions. So a lot of great stuff for people to tune in. You were the first Homeland Security advisor after 9/11 in Alaska. So you have a lot of interesting perspective that will be for our future episodes. So we're looking forward to those.
Yeah, we're going to get onto that. I think the ones that are really top that I've heard some discussion about is the Department of Education. And it's very dear to me because that's the mission of the center, is to educate. It's an educational nonprofit. And we have credibility, and we know schools, we know teachers, we know what they're teaching, and when these kids come through the doors, there's some out there that are going to save this nation, and you can see it in their eyes. And I want to talk about a little bit about what the Department of Education has really done and not done for the country. And I had a little background in education. I worked for the University of Alaska a little bit. So
yeah. Well, I look forward to that that show.
Yeah, it'll be a good one.
All right, Drew. Well, thanks for coming in today, and we'll get back together on the next episode.
And Brad, I want to have you out the ranch before I get all that work done. And just remember, tolerance is a character flaw.
Just because no one knows doesn't mean it isn't true.